Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's the Wrestling Classic Justin here, back with another casual conversation with the Classic, and this time I am kind of interviewing the interviewer, one of my favorite interviewers. You've probably seen him on YouTube, you've probably seen him on Instagram, hell, you've probably even seen him on All Elite Wrestling, doing some backstage stuff, doing the Control Room Center. It's Chris Van Vliet. How are you doing? Long time coming. We tried to call millions of times, whether it was at events, at the Rumble or WrestleMania, but we never did. You repped the Wrestling Classic, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you for that. On a couple of weeks there, but how's it going? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on, Justin. All it took was a worldwide pandemic for us to be talking like this.
Yeah, it took a worldwide pandemic for me to try to take initiative and be like, all right, more interviews, more content. But I'm glad, man. I'm glad because there's so much I want to talk to you about. I find you very fascinating, by the way, just from the conversations we've had and knowing what you do, and knowing that, I don't even know now, is your main, what is your main career? What does Chris Van Vliet do?
I mean, I would call myself a TV host. I think that'd be my main job. That's what I've been doing since I graduated from university. But I'm a content creator now. I mean, it's 2020. You don't need TV to be out there, making content. So YouTuber / podcaster / TV host / radio personality / keynote speaker, I guess is what I am. Also / actor. I've been taking acting lessons. I've been in a few movies recently and a few commercials. So if I list off these movies, you're going to be like, oh my God, yeah, you were in that. I've never heard of that movie.
I'm curious.
So I'm in a movie called The Bronze. I play a reporter in that movie. I'm in a movie called Criminal Activities with John Travolta. I'm in a movie called Love Finds You in Sugar Creek. I played a reporter in all of these movies.
Well,
if you've seen the Love
in all the movies, I guess you're the TV host reporting guy. So
I've reported my whole life. If you've seen The Love Guru with Mike Myers, I'm a party guest in the scene where he meets Mini-Me for the first time, where he meets Vern Troyer. I'm in Chloe with Liam Neeson.
It's so crazy. We actually do know a lot of these movies, but I guess we didn't know each other then, so I didn't spot you.
Yeah, so acting is something I've always been interested in, but TV hosting, broadcasting was always the main gig. So now I'm starting to dip that toe back into the acting world a little bit more.
Oh, that's sweet, man. And you've already got a bunch of stuff under your belt. The thing that always fascinated me about you is that you were a TV host and you are an actor and TV host, but you have such a passion for wrestling and being the Wrestling Classic. Obviously, being a wrestling fan, I just am generally. I've come across the interviews so many times throughout the years, and getting to know you, the biggest thing that I realized was that wasn't even what you did full time. But you were such a passion for it that you were going out of your way, and you were meeting up with these wrestlers, and you were getting these really cool, informative interviews. And that's the one thing that really stood out to me. And I'm always man, that's inspiring for someone that's still trying to figure out what he wants to do with this social wealth that I was thankfully graced with out of nowhere, with hard work out of nowhere. But when did you first discover wrestling? How old were you? What was your first wrestling memory? I want to break down the wrestling journey you've been on.
Sure. I mean, my first memory is late 80s. It would be on at my grandparents' house on a Saturday night, and not that my grandfather was a big wrestling fan, but it just happened to be on. And that's when I was introduced to the larger-than-life characters, the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man, Hulk Hogan, also, Repo Man, Coco Beware. I was just so fascinated with those characters. And every time we were at my grandfather's house, my grandparents' house on a Saturday, I'd watch it. I wouldn't think anything of it. Then I started being a wrestler in high school. And when you're an amateur wrestler on the wrestling team in high school, you are told pro wrestling, that's garbage. You can't watch that. That stuff's the fake stuff. What we doing here? This is real. And I had a really good friend of mine, and this is in the late 90s, we're talking 97, 98. I had a friend of mine, and that was when you talked on the phone all the time. The internet was very much in its infancy at the time.
Texting wasn't the thing. You literally
texting. Yeah, nobody even had cell phones. Yeah. So I would talk to my friend on the phone, 15, 16 years old. And on Monday nights at 9 o'clock, I knew I had to let him go because he was going to go watch Raw. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, why are you watching this stuff? Like, I know what the real wrestling is. I'm on the high school wrestling team. And then one Monday I was just like, all right, man, like, I'll watch this. We can stay on the phone, whatever. And I just got so into it. And at the time it was like McMahon and Austin. That was the big storyline. And I was just like totally hooked. And it was almost like you flipped a switch. And from that moment on, I watched everything. I watched Raw, SmackDown, I watched ECW, I watched Nitro during commercial breaks. I would record them on VHS and then watch them again the next day. So that Attitude Era, I was all in on wrestling. And I actually took some of my amateur skills and like thought to myself, I think I want to be a pro wrestler one day.
Yeah, because you trained. I was going to ask what you next about that next thing, because you did train to wrestle.
Yeah, so I mean, I was a backyard wrestler. I mean, who wasn't? At that era, so I was a backyard wrestler, and I made a pact with one of my buddies that when we both finished high school, we were going to find a way to go to wrestling school. I held up my end of the bargain. He ended up going to teachers college, but I trained in Toronto. I went to wrestling school one summer in between university. And I trained for a few weeks, few months actually, and kind of had to make a decision when it was time to go back to school at the end of the year. Was I going to put all my efforts into school and get my degree? I was studying communication studies. Or was I going to put all my efforts into wrestling school and make that my dream? And I took the idea of like, I was going to get into broadcasting. Wrestling was always going to be there if I wanted to go back to wrestling school, but I wasn't going to put my education on hold. And I've been so fortunate throughout my life, throughout my career, to kind of be able to do both, to be able to do the kind of the broadcasting side of wrestling. And even though I, have never competed in a match, I've been a ring announcer and taken many a bumps.
Yeah.
I have a certain appreciation because I've been in there. I know what it feels like. I think it's just an appreciation level that I think a lot of people who have never taken a bump, I don't really know if they can understand.
Yeah, you have a different understanding of it.
Yeah, and by no means am I saying that I am an expert, and by no means am I fully trained or, could I have a match today? Absolutely not. If I worked at it, sure. But I just want to, it gives me a different appreciation to know, oh, that's, that really does hurt. Or, oh, maybe that thing doesn't hurt that much.
I just find it so like insane that like you had a decision to make at one point, whether it was at your education or pursuing wrestling. And you went towards the education. You took broadcast journalism and that you got a degree in that. But yet you still took that and used it to somehow still be involved with wrestling. Like, don't take that away from yourself, because easily you could have done the broadcast journalism thing and just been like, kept wrestling on the back burner. But you were still so passionate about wrestling and so like such a fan of the business itself that you still found a way to be like, oh, in my spare time, I get to interview some wrestlers and stuff. Like, when did you make that decision that you wanted to start interviewing wrestlers and getting involved with wrestling? And was there a certain thing that came up that gave you that opportunity? And you're like, oh, this was cool, or was it something you decided to do yourself?
It kind of happened by accident, if I'm being honest. Like my first job after I graduated from university, I was an intern at this tiny TV station in Peterborough, Ontario. I was driving 60 miles, 100 kilometers each way for an internship that wasn't paying me anything. The internship ended up turning into a job. And so I'm on TV. I'm a news reporter. I'm 22 years old. And I'm thinking, this is great. I'm on TV. I'm living the dream. I'm out there every night, like doing it and telling these stories, but I wanted more. I wanted to do something else. And I ended up applying for a job. And to make a long story short, I ended up getting a job in your town, actually. I got a job in Vancouver. Yeah, I was hosting a show that aired on City TV there, and also Razor, which became now MTV2 Canada. And that was where I kind of realized, like, I'm doing these interviews with celebrities, musicians, actors. I'm like, I wonder if I reached out to WWE, if they would let me do an interview with one of their people. And I like dove into the internet and tried to find a contact of someone I could reach out to there. And they had ECW with SmackDown when they were touring together, was coming to Vancouver. And I reached out to them and I said, is there a possibility I can do an interview? And they said, we're making Bobby Lashley available next week or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, like not only do I get an interview, but I'm getting an interview with Bobby Lashley, the ECW champion. And that's where it kind of all began, that I realized that you hold this power when you're on television of like, you want to promote something, I have the place where you can promote it. And that's where it kind of all began. So no
What
matter what
year was
TV's, that was in 2007. It was like January of 2007 when I did that interview. And I posted it recently, like last summer, as like a throwback of like, here's my first interview. Like, not very good. I have this blonde tuft of hair here, like I was in a pop punk band or
You know what
something.
it is though? Let me talk about looks for a second, because we always look back and you always like, why did I have my hair like that? Why did I dress like that? We all of us do that. We're all guilty of doing that. But I always think about it and I'm like, well, honestly, that was the look at the time. People just don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
it looks so funny, but like, I'm sure like 10 years from now, I'll probably look back and see something I'm wearing and be like, why was I wearing that? Like, what was going on?
Yeah, yeah. We'll look back at this interview in 10 years and be like, what are those things that are in their ears while they're talking?
I have
We
wires
won't,
still.
yeah, wires. What are you living in 2018?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so Bobby Lashley was the first one. Obviously, you had the credibility because you were on TV, and they gave you the opportunity to speak with Bobby Lashley. Was
Yeah.
from going from Bobby Lashley, was it next to another WWE superstar reaching out to them, or did you get the bug to be like trying to find whoever you could get now because you just got that adrenaline?
Yeah, yeah. So
from the wrestling.
this was the dream job in Vancouver. I absolutely loved it, and out of nowhere, one big media conglomerate bought another one. Chum got bought out by CTV and merged together, and our show ended up getting canceled, which was like heartbreaking to me. And I had to pack up my car, drive myself back to Toronto, 47-hour drive across the country, and I was basically unemployed for 7 months. And I spent those 7 months like applying for other jobs and auditioning for stuff and like getting down to me and one other person, and then I would go to the other person. And I finally got hired in Toronto hosting a show called Inside Jam on Sun TV, an entertainment show.
Yeah.
And I just kind of followed that same mentality of like, we're always going to be pitched these interviews with musicians who want to promote their album, these authors that want to promote their book. If wrestling happens to be coming to town, I'm always going to reach out and try to make those interviews happen. So that was it. I just started making these interviews happen. And every job that I was with, I would use that as the platform of like, hey, can we do an interview with you on, the TV station? And I eventually started going, we're sometimes only airing like 20 or 30 seconds on TV, but we're having a great like 10, 15, 20-minute conversation. I'm asking questions I've always wanted to know the answer to. Like some of my early interviews, I was working in Cleveland after my job in Toronto. Some of my early interviews were like Mick Foley or Jeff Hardy, and I would put them up online.
Yeah.
Right. We would air like 20 seconds, like Impact Wrestling's in town and Jeff Hardy came by and here's what he had to say. Oh, you should check out the show. It's going to be entertaining. Tickets start at $20. And that would be like the whole interview that we'd show on air. But I'd done this like great, interesting interview, at least to me as a wrestling fan, that I thought, this just can't die. This just can't, just lay on the cutting room floor for no one to see. So I just started putting the raw interviews on YouTube.
Yeah, I was going to say, so originally these interviews were just for the TV shows that you were working for.
Yeah, and this was in 2011 when I started my YouTube channel that I have now. And it was basically just like, I was doing interviews with all kinds of different people, and I've been so fortunate and grateful to be able to interview some of the biggest celebrities on the planet, and as well as interviewing some of the biggest wrestlers on the planet. So I was just putting these interviews on there just because I wanted other fans to appreciate it. And if I did an interview with like someone like Henry Cavill when he first got the Superman gig, that was really cool that got to air on the TV station that I worked for in Cleveland. But I thought, like, this is a really cool moment. I want to share this with other Superman fans. So I would post that on there. Or these early interviews with Jeff Hardy, Mick Foley, I would post on my YouTube channel just because I wanted other wrestling fans and other fans in general to just also be able to appreciate these moments. And that's honestly where it started, completely by accident.
Truly the definition of someone that is a good content creator, though, because you do things just for the sake of like, I want other people to enjoy this too. And if I get a kick out of it, I'm sure there's other people that get a kick out of it too. Like this right now, I don't know who's going to really enjoy it, but I know there's people that follow me that want to follow the same path that you're on or what you're doing or inspired by you, or they're like oddly inspired by me for some reason, and they're going to want to listen to this, and then it's good content. You know what I mean? And I really appreciate you sharing the little parts, like the fact that you did work an internship where you had to drive back and forth across town not getting paid, or you did not have a job for 7 months and you had to figure it out. Because I think and the reason I point those out is because I think in a lot of people's stories, or when people see people on social media or on YouTube and they're really successful, they gloss over the fact that, these guys went through some stuff too. It wasn't all easy. And you quickly glossed over those periods, which is what we do when we talk about it, because we don't like to talk about those periods. But people, I think, also need to notice that, because a lot of people, the one thing I'll say from everything I've heard so far is you never really quit.
Oh yeah, and look, I didn't just gloss over them. I just didn't want to make this story so crazy.
No, I understand.
And long.
Yeah.
But let me tell you a story of how I got this job in Vancouver. So I'm an intern turned into a TV reporter in this small town, Peterborough, Ontario. Wanted something more, so I went to an open casting call for Much Music. You'll be familiar with Much Music.
Yeah, no, 100% Rap City.
Of course, right? And for any Americans that are listening, it's basically like MTV.
Yeah.
So
they don't even play music videos anymore. It's really disappointing, by the way.
No.
I try to watch Much Music like The Simpsons. I'm like, what are the Simpsons doing on here?
So I went to this open casting call, and there's 300 people there, and I walk in and I'm filling out this form, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be here all day, but this would be such a cool job to be a Much Music VJ.
That's what I'm going to say. Was it one of those VJ searches they were doing?
It was not a VJ search, but it was an open casting call. They call these cattle calls. We're just anyone who's interested, come in, and they're just trying to see what's out there. So I'm filling out this form, and this giant security guard comes over to me, and he's like, hey, come with me. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? And he's like, don't worry, it's okay. They want to see the people they're interested in first before they get to everyone else. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. Thank you. So I go in, I do my little audition thing. I'm sure it's terrible. They end up giving me a call back. So I go back in for a more formal audition. And that boosted my confidence, Justin, so much. Didn't end up getting that job. But then when there was a posting for this show in Vancouver called 969, which was basically the West Coast kind of TRL.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, that company already likes me. I'm going to send my stuff in. I sent my stuff in to them, didn't hear anything back. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe this. I thought that they liked me.
Now your confidence getting crushed a little bit.
Right. But I knew the name of the person that was doing the hiring because it was on the application. So I randomly called up the TV station and asked for her by name.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, one moment, please. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is going to work. It goes to her voicemail. I leave her this voicemail. She ends up sending me an email saying, hey, we're still going to look at stuff. We'll get back to you if we're interested. In her email signature was her direct phone line. So I'm like, well, next week, if I don't hear from her, I'm going to call her up. So what happened was I didn't hear from her. I call her up the next week. I said, hey, I submitted my stuff. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to be in Vancouver next Thursday. It'd be great to, just see you. This was a total and complete lie. I was not going to be in Vancouver. As you know, it's a 5-hour flight.
No, it is, yeah. And it's expensive for some reason. It's more expensive to fly from Toronto to Vancouver than it is to fly from Vancouver to California. I don't know.
Right.
I know, or even other places in the States that are 5 hours away. For some reason, the flight to Vancouver to Toronto is double the price. It's weird. But go on.
It's so weird. But I figured if I could make my own luck, if I could, basically stack the odds in my favor, if I'm going to say I'm going to be out there and they bite on it, I'll buy a flight right now. And they did. They said, oh, well, if you're going to be here, it'd be great to just meet you in person.
Yeah.
And that was basically how I got that job. I created the opportunity for myself.
I know. So you created the opportunity for yourself. And I know you actually technically weren't going to be there, but because you said you were, they set up. But, I did an interview. My interviewing history is the funniest because I started 2 podcasts. The first one I did was just called The Wrestling Classic, and I interviewed a few wrestlers like the Singh brothers before they made it to the WWE, and El Phantasmo before he went to New Japan Pro Wrestling, and MJF before he blew up. And then I did some visual interviews. If you watch the one I did with Sheamus, you will watch my hands. I had no idea what to do with my hands. So for anyone out there that is also trying to do interviews or any sort of on-screen conversations like this and stuff, it takes reps. I'm not even that good yet, but the more I do it, I know the better I'll get. I think it's something that you can probably agree with too. It takes reps, man. But what I wanted to say is when I interviewed the Singh brothers, they said something to me that stuck with me ever since. And it's pretty much a story of their success too, and pretty much kind of what you just said. Like the biggest thing or the best thing you can do if you want something, or you're trying to get a certain job or get someone's attention, is just be there. Whether you don't know if anything's going to happen or not, like, be there. They showed me the whole story about how they they flew to Toronto to be extras, and they were just backstage trying to hand out tapes and stuff to people, like just showing up places. And I can contest firsthand, like a lot of the cool things I've got to do in the past 3-4 years is because I just showed up places. Like I showed up at WrestleMania, I showed up at the Royal Rumble last minute if that was the case, like just to be in the area, because that's the only way you can really create those opportunities for yourself, is actually taking that leap of faith and just doing things outside of your comfort zone. Because I don't think people either understand how intimidating it is. So even though you found that phone number and you're like, oh, I have a direct line, or I can call these guys straight up, how intimidating it is to actually do that at first.
Oh yeah. But I think that, first of all, you got to make yourself available, right?
Yeah.
But I think that more importantly, if you want to get the things that others, don't have, you got to be willing to do the things that others won't do. And, I'm sure 300, 400, 500 people applied for that job. I can guarantee you, I was the only person that called the station up directly and, made that happen for myself. But look, if I had sucked or blown my audition and had been terrible, I wouldn't have got the job. But it was the fact that, okay, now I've got the job. Now I've got something I need to live up to now. Now the bar has been raised. I need to now meet that expectation.
No, I completely understand. So back to wrestling though.
Yeah.
So you did Bobby Lashley, you started reaching out to other guys. Was there anyone that, like, which interview stood out to you that you realized that you want to keep getting more wrestlers on there? Was there anything that was like, oh, this one was really good?
So it was, they were all just kind of happening as like the wrestlers were in town. When Raw, when SmackDown, when Impact was in town, I would do these interviews, and we'd have the guests on the TV station, and that would be that. Got to a point where my boss said, Chris, I think we need to cool it on the wrestlers for a little while. We've had like 3 of them on in the last 6 months, and I don't know if everyone appreciates wrestling as much as you do. So I was just kind of doing them when they were convenient, and then I had this trip, this annual tradition of going to WrestleMania with 3 of my best friends. And I'm like, well, if I'm at WrestleMania, I might as well do some interviews at Access. And it was just kind of doing them when it was convenient. And like 2 years ago, I went, what if I just did them when I had free time? Not just doing them when they were convenient. I was living in Florida at the time. A lot of wrestlers live in Orlando. Yeah. I'm like, what if I were to like drive? It's about a 3-hour drive. There's a lot of independent wrestling in the area as well. I said, what if I were to like go out of my way to start making these happen? And that's when my channel really started getting some traction. I started making that conscious decision of like, I'm going to go out of my way and actually make these interviews happen, rather than just waiting for them to be convenient, waiting for them to be tied into the TV station. I'm going to go do this on my own. And that's when, this was 2018, I set the specific goal that year of, I want to do 40 interviews this year. Wow. Vague goals get vague results. Up to that point, I think the most interviews I uploaded in a year was like 17 or 18. So I'm going to now more than double that, because I'm going out of my way to make these happen. And I ended up getting 50 interviews that year. Last year, my goal was to do 50 interviews. I ended up doing 100 interviews. Wow. So I think what changed is that phrase, vague goals get vague results. I think you need to be specific about what it is that you're chasing after. Otherwise, it'd be akin to getting into your car and not knowing where you're driving to. You're just going to end up driving around aimlessly.
And I know you've said that before on your page, but like just hearing that, I'm like, that does make sense though, because the more that you set goals for yourself of how many interviews you want to do, that's the more you put out and you produce, because you set yourself to a certain expectation of yourself.
Yes,
that's insane. And I noticed that too, because it was like the last couple of years where I really started noticing and watching your interviews regularly. And you do a really good job of bringing people are comfortable with you. You can just tell, which is hard to do. Like when you're speaking to people, they're very comfortable with you. You get them to open up in a way that's like, it's something you must learn down the road, right? As you're doing them. But I think the one thing that did really impress me a lot was the whole idea of you actually going out on your spare time to meet up with these wrestlers wherever they were to make sure that interview happened.
Well, I mean, look, it's no different than, what you're doing. I'm sure you get DMs all the time asking, how do you grow an Instagram page as big as yours? Yeah. And, your simple response will be, well, are you posting every day? And the answer will always be, for the person who has a lot less followers. No, I'm not. And
No,
it's
because
just
for
like,
me,
okay.
I like, and that's true. Because I always tell people, like, when they do ask me, I'm like, the one thing that has to be that you have to do is consistency.
Yeah.
You have to be consistent. If there isn't consistency, you're not going to grow. People are going to forget about you. They don't value you, like, you as a person. Like, you have to have consistency, but I also believe you also have to be some sort of a personality. I mean, in the sense of, like, people need to be able to relate to you and kind of know who you are, other than just, because that's what they want to follow the person at some point. You want them to follow the page, but at some point you also want them to support and follow the person. And I think you can relate to that too, because yes, people love your interviews, but I think you're growing a little bit of your own fan base now too, where, like, for example, myself, when I saw you pop up on AEW's YouTube channel and I was just casually watching one of the videos, like, I didn't get excited because of Chris Van Vliet, the interview. I got excited because, like, yo, Chris is on AEW. Like, I'm supporting you now. Like, I was more excited about that. Like, that's sweet, Those are the few things,
I think the biggest thing that I really learned when I really started getting specific about content creation was people aren't liking your Instagram page, following you, subscribing to you on YouTube because of who you are. They're doing it because of who they are. And you're, like, showing them a reflection of, like, why they're following you, because they see something in you that they like about themselves. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that too many people try to make it about themselves, and it just comes across looking like really phony. I'm so aware. I am so aware that nobody is coming to my channel because of me. They're coming to my channel because of who my guests are. And maybe they're coming because they like the style of interview that we have, but no one is coming to see me talk for an hour.
No,
They're coming to see me have a conversation with the person that they're actually there to see. And as soon as I became aware of that, everything changed.
And that's 100% true. But at the same time, like, and it's because they relate to you because they're wrestling fans and they wish they could sit there and have those conversations with these wrestlers too. And then it's just a weird fine line between the two. But, like, I think you need to be consistent. You got to be someone they can relate to 100%. And I think that's the biggest two things from my thing. But the vague goals make vague results. That speaks to me in a different level, because that's also very, very true. How'd you get linked up with AEW? How did that all come about?
I had done so many interviews with different AEW talent that I think it just kind of happened kind of organically. It was the now infamous interview I did in the backseat with Chris Jericho right after he signed with AEW, kind of got the ball rolling. I had sent a tweet out that I really wanted to do an interview with Tony Khan, and Jericho retweeted it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow. Like,
I remember that. Yeah.
So nice of him. And Tony Khan had been on Talk is Jericho. So I reached out to Jericho and I said, thank you so much for retweeting this. I said, do you think there's, like, a possibility that this could actually happen? And he's like, I don't know. Let me ask him. And then, like, 10 minutes later, he's like, yeah, he says he'll do it. Here's his number. Like, set this interview up. And I'm like, wow, like, I can't believe that. So then, the interview with Tony Khan led to an interview with Cody Rhodes. I went and I covered Double or Nothing, and I did an interview with the Bucks. So I had done a lot of different interviews, and it was great. I was doing a lot of AEW interviews as AEW people were made available to me. And as AEW was getting more and more and more popular, at the beginning of last year. And it was just through those conversations that I had, through those interviews I had, that they said, hey, if you're not busy on October 2nd, we want you to be part of the show in DC. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. And that was it. And
that's sweet.
I said, so, what do you want me to do? And they're like, well, we'll figure that out closer to the date. And I've realized that that's how wrestling works. They'll just kind of, tell you day of, or right before, like, oh, here's the thing you're going to do. And
that meet me over here. I'm here right now.
Yeah.
Very last minute. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're going that way.
And what a cool, amazing opportunity to be part of, the control room, the control center segment, and then through a couple of episodes of AEW as well, through a couple of episodes of Dynamite. It's been so cool to be part of that.
That's going to be like you're going to be a part of history in a sense on those couple of episodes of Dynamite, because it's like going back and watching the first, handful of episodes of Nitro. Like, you remember those, they stand out to you, and it's like, oh, that's cool, AEW as as we are moving forward now, like how do you think they've done as a company compared to the WWE and stuff like that? Where do you see them as when it comes to terms of competition? I'm sure people are very curious to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I think wrestling is where it's at right now, like with the excitement level because of what happened last year. Like 2019 was such a pivotal year for pro wrestling, and it was basically led by the charge of AEW on January 1st going, hey, in May, we're going to start this company. And, people were so jacked up and so
Yeah,
excited about AEW for 5 months before they even didn't even have a match yet. So I think that AEW has been just amazing at kind of shifting the gears. For 20 years, we basically had one choice, and that is no disrespect to Ring of Honor or New Japan or Impact Wrestling. But when it came to mainstream wrestling, we only had one choice. And I think that AEW, even just being a part of these conversations now, is a huge testament to what they've been doing. And the company's only a year old. Double or Nothing in May is going to be their 1 year anniversary, really.
yeah, that's crazy. That's true. They haven't even been around for a full year, like as like active on television. I didn't even think about that. That's insane. I will say though, like I know I think it's a little bit different for us fans that kind of like I was at the end half and I was a kid, but like to be there while there was a WCW and there was something different, I think it makes you appreciate it a little bit more because no matter what you watch under the WWE umbrella, whether it's NXT, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, NXT UK, or whatever, like you can still, and I will be a WWE fan for life. It's what I grew up on, that in WCW. But it's like you're watching a WWE produced product. It's produced the way that they produce television, and to get something else that is mainstream, but yet it's still produced a little different. It still feels a little raw, and like their live TV feels like more of anything could happen than watching Raw on its live TV because Raw is live TV, but at the same time, it's still very heavily produced live TV. Well, I'm not saying that AEW is not heavily produced, but there's still a little on that wild, wild west side of things where it's like, go cut your promo, let's go do your guys' thing. And then that gives me a little bit more excitement to tune in every week because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like it could be really, really good. It could be really, really bad. But regardless, I'm looking forward to see what happens,
Yeah, well, after Double or Nothing, and there was this talk about TV contracts going to be announced soon. I said they've got to do two things if they want to be taken seriously. One, they need to be on a network that people can actually find, that people have heard of. And once again, this is no disrespect to Impact Wrestling, but I don't know where Pop TV is, on my dial. I don't know where Destination America is.
I think that was like a good 3-4 years that I couldn't even find it here on a regular channel in Canada. Like mostly in Canada. I guess I'm like, I can't watch it in Canada. Like I don't know where it is.
So number one, they needed to be on an actual network. Boom, tick that off with being on TNT. And then I said, number two, once TV does start, it needs to look professional. And they did an amazing job. Obviously, the talent that you see on camera, they're some of the best performers in the world. But the people they have behind the scenes running production, setting, making the sets, doing the directing, they've all worked in WCW or WWE or Impact Wrestling. They're all at the top of their game too. So you've got this great talent in front of the camera and behind the camera. And I think that for a company that's not even a year old in terms of actually putting out wrestling shows and wrestling matches, to be where they're at now is amazing, especially because it's really affected what WWE is doing, with their product week to week. They're obviously, watching what AEW is doing, picking out some of the things they like, and now making it part of their product.
How did you feel about all the creative stuff WWE's been coming up with these past couple of months? During this whole pandemic, we've had no audience crowds. No crowds, meaning no audiences. But we've seen them get a little creative. WrestleMania was gonna be as much as people say, "Oh, this WrestleMania wasn't WrestleMania." Like people are never gonna talk about it again. I'm like, they are, man. This is like probably one of the most unique WrestleManias they're ever gonna have. So it's not just gonna disappear from the existence. Those few fans like, watch them never talk. I'm like, dude, they're gonna talk about this for years. They're gonna be like, hey, we did a WrestleMania during a pandemic when there's no other sports on television. Like, dude, they're gonna talk about this for decades. But how do you feel about all the stuff they did? How do you feel about the Firefly Funhouse and the creative liberties they took with doing stuff like that, as well as the Boneyard match and whatnot? Like, how was your take on it?
Well, look, I think that wrestling still being on TV week to week live is this nice tiny sliver of a reminder that like there is kind of still some normalcy out there.
Yeah.
So number one, I appreciate that. I think that a lot of people, when they saw that WWE was going to have movie style matches, I think when we just saw like that news story, I think a lot of people went, well, that's not wrestling. Like what, this is going to be terrible. And then when we saw the Boneyard match, and then when we saw the Firefly Funhouse match, I think we went, man, that was really well done. Like that was really well produced. And I, in fact, think we're going to see a lot more of that. So I like that WWE basically is pivoted. Instead of going, this is the way we do it, like it or not, I think they went, man, I don't know if we can keep doing things that way. We're going to pivot, try something. If it works, great. If it doesn't,
is there a better time? Is there a better time than now for them to try these things? That's what I kept thinking. I'm like, and also, personal opinion, I get excited when they say they're going to do something different because I'm like, there's not an audience in the crowd anyways. Like, they're never going to be able to do a Firefly Funhouse match at a big event like WrestleMania again because no crowd's going to be happy about sitting there watching the screen. They can do it on Raws and SmackDowns and maybe some other pay-per-views, but they'll never be able to do it at WrestleMania again with it being okay with the audience that's there live. And that's the thing. So I'm like, and most people, when you ask them, most regular fans, you ask them their top 5 favorite matches, at least 4 out of 5 of them are going to come from a WrestleMania because those are the matches people remember. And I just really appreciate the fact that they decided to get creative. Like, once again, my biggest personal opinion was that I don't think AJ Styles versus The Undertaker in a regular wrestling match was going to be half as good as that Boneyard match was. And that's just my opinion. Like, I don't think it would have been. And like you said,
I think there's something about there's something about the empty arenas that are like, even if the match is great, it's kind of also this reminder that like, maybe things are, as much as it's cool to have this live and this is a reminder of some normalcy in the world, it's also a reminder of like, this is weird. Like, this isn't normal. And I think that
it is kind of hard to watch.
It's just different, but I appreciate that it's still going on when the NHL, NBA, XFL, everything, MLB is all canceled.
I can tell you're Canadian because you said NHL first too. And every time I've been doing podcasts or interviews, I always say NHL first and everyone's like, NHL. I'm like, yeah, NHL.
What's that?
No, like, before the NFL and everything. I'm like, yeah, the NHL, man. But
I actually think the NFL is actually going to be able to run this year.
Well, I've been saying for like every interview or podcast I've been on so far, I'm like, listen, it's weird because I appreciate the wrestling still going on because I'll tell you this, after that WrestleMania weekend ended, I'm like, how grateful I am that I had something to look forward to this Saturday and Sunday. Like, otherwise, this has been really, like, we still have something to look forward to on Monday. AEW is going to come on right now. Like, I have something to look forward to for the next couple of hours. Like, that's what that little bit of normal life things that I would have done anyways. Like, it's great to have that there. But I'm like, you do notice the fact that wrestling is like the only form of entertainment. It isn't its own like bubble, but it's the only form that actually does work off the crowd. Like, the crowd actually is a part of the show. I think you can still play competitive hockey or competitive football without an audience there. Most of the time you're zoning yourself into the game anyways.
Yeah.
Well, like, the one where you actually feed off the audience is the one that's still going on, and it comes off a little weird. But let me ask you this. Have you noticed, though, without the audience there, that the promos seem to just hit a little bit harder and just sound so much better, and like you feel like you're listening to them more without them being interrupted or chants going on in the middle of people's promos where they're yelling over people. Like, I feel like they've just been hitting home with the promos.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If there's anything that's been elevated during this time, it's the promos. It's also the camera work during the promo. And Edge's right before WrestleMania is one that really stands out for me. Like, the camera getting super close, super intense, almost like he was speaking directly to you.
Well, that's the thing, because I think usually when there's an audience, they stand in the middle of the ring and they're speaking to the audience. But now that they're actually looking into the camera and they look, and they're taking creative steps, like, let's just have the person come to the stage and cut the promo, because there's no need for them to go to the middle of the ring and talk to nobody. Like, let's just do these promos from backstage, because it's not really necessary for them to go talk and stand in the middle of the ring and cut a 20-minute monologue on nobody unless they're looking in the camera.
Right. This is going to be a time though, like, we're going to like tell our grandkids about, we're going to go, hey, in 2020 there was this thing that happened in the world and nobody could leave their houses, but wrestling still continued. That's why you're seeing this old throwback clip with no audience. But we're also going to remember this as this was the time when WWE and AEW got creative and were really able to figure out what worked and what didn't work when it mattered the most.
And I do think it's really cool. Just like another high five to AEW that there is an AEW that exists, because we're seeing two different versions of them trying to pull it off. All other independent wrestling and big companies have kind of shut down or are not active right now. But you have WWE doing one thing, you have AEW doing one thing, and you do, if you pay enough attention, kind of see them influencing each other.
Oh yeah.
Like obviously the first one that comes to my mind is how AEW shot their first show with the camera angle being towards the entrance. And then the very next week you saw WWE doing the same thing, because that just makes more sense than showing an empty crowd. But it's cool that you see them bouncing back and forth from each other like that, and they're still putting out content. And they're still getting creative, man. Like this whole Money in the Bank thing in the headquarters, like that's something that would probably never have happened if there wasn't a pandemic right now.
Yeah, it's wild. And I think the real thing where I think you have to give kudos to AEW is they highlighted in their first few weeks what was important. They highlighted the entranceway and they highlighted the ring, and they made everything around it black. And they were in Jacksonville, Daly's place for the first show. WWE did the exact opposite. They highlighted the fact that nobody was there at Raw. They highlighted the fact that nobody was there at NXT and SmackDown. And I thought that if you're pointing out the obvious, I think it makes it weird. It's the same as like when the best man gets up to give a speech and goes, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous." You're like, well, I didn't think you were nervous, but now that you told us you were nervous, we all think you're nervous. And I think that WWE shining a light on the empty seats was actually a terrible idea for the first week.
I also don't think they knew. I don't think they expected it to last as long as it was. Whoever is calling the shots, who's probably usually the audience of one, did not expect this to be as big as a deal as it actually ended up being. And the fact that they're still doing it, and they probably thought by WrestleMania they'd be back in, back to regular scheduling, and that's where that played off. But yeah, it is an interesting time. We'll be talking about it for years. There's a lot of it's weird. It's weird. Wrestling's weird right now, but it's enjoyable. I do find it hard to follow and watch sometimes, but without the audience. But it's showing what these guys. It's showing the quality of athletes, and not even that, just like even like their entertainment skills, their acting skills and stuff are during this period. Because to work off of no crowd noise, to work off of no adrenaline, to take bumps on ladders and get beat up to an audience of like zero isn't easy. To have moments of winning your first championship without a crowd there must not be the most fun, but you got to give credit where credit's due. And I think wrestling fans are the most judgmental fans, and I just try to remind them all the time, like, just be appreciative and grateful that we're even still getting wrestling, because it's not fun for these guys either. They probably want to be at home chilling too, hearing about all the news, but they're still going out there, putting on shows for us, doing the thing, giving us something that I look forward to every week, 3-4 times a week, depending on how many shows you watch. And it's cool, man. It is a bummer, though, with all the releases and stuff. The timing probably wasn't the greatest. I understand why, but it's been a good time.
Well, look, I think I also want to, give a lot of credit to the people who've stepped up during this time. Like my friend Austin Theory is, got to work WrestleMania, because of this. And like, I think that's incredible that WWE has basically said, whether you think you're ready or not, you're doing this because we believe that you can. And those people have stepped up and stepped into that role. And I think that a lot of credit needs to be given to those people. Also in AEW, they've been using a lot of local talent who have been doing a great job on Dynamite, also on AEW Dark. They're basically making the best of a situation where I think a lot of other companies might have just packed it in and went home.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And there are a lot of people getting the spotlight that you wouldn't expect to be getting the spotlight unless this happened as well. But man, how exciting is it going to be when the audiences return and those first shows happen, and we're going to see a bunch of, like, I can't tell you how much I miss, like, seeing Pac on TV and the Lucha Brothers and MJF, and like on the other side of the things, like I actually genuinely miss seeing Roman Reigns and others that haven't been on TV much. Like, it's going to be It's going to be cool, man, when we get back to that. But back to you really quickly.
Sure.
Speaking of someone that learned taking bumps and stuff, and I told you this is a casual conversation. It's like if we walked into a coffee shop or met for the
Yeah, I
first
love
time and
it.
we were
Yeah,
talking. We're just shooting here.
like if we had a beer. Yeah,
Yeah, we're just shooting here. I don't know what I'm doing, but we're doing it. I know what I'm kind
we
of
could.
doing.
It's like we're having a kokanee together.
There
I
you
miss
go.
kokanees.
Yeah,
Yeah,
now I kind of want one.
me too.
Yeah, maybe next time we should have a beer while we're doing this.
We should.
Yeah. Maybe we should actually meet in person and properly hang out next time we get the opportunity to. Yeah.
Done. Well, I'm gonna be living on your coast soon. So
Yeah, no, and honestly, the plan was to come back to LA after WrestleMania at some point. That obviously everything got paused. I didn't end up going to Tampa. I didn't end up coming to LA. Very grateful though. Just side note that you were just mentioning how you were in LA in January. Like I luckily planned like a last minute trip to LA in February because my cousin wanted to go down. We have family down there. He's like, let's just go do like boys weekend in LA or whatnot. And I'm like, well, if I'm coming, then I'm gonna stay for longer because I got people in to meet and stuff. But I had no idea I was gonna come home, and next thing you know, I wasn't gonna be allowed to go back. Literally, I came back in the week of the week I came back. The exact same week I came back. I came back like February 27th, and like a few days later, it's like the NBA is canceled. Tom Hanks has coronavirus.
Yes, I know.
I'm like, oh, so I'm not going back. Okay.
Yeah.
It was wild, man. But yeah, when you're definitely down there and I come back, we'll definitely we can get together. We can go to the Dash Radio studio and just shoot a show live in Dash Radio on the front window on Hollywood Boulevard.
I love it. And I'll be up I love Vancouver so much and I miss Vancouver. And I lived there, like I said, for a year. I'll be up there too.
So, non-wrestling related question. Obviously, you're a dual citizen, right?
I'm not. I have a green card.
Okay. So if you want to come back to Canada right now, are you allowed to, or is it still blocked for you?
Oh yeah, no.
Okay.
Just making. Yeah. So green card's basically like the next best thing to having an American passport.
Yeah.
But I can work anywhere. I can travel.
I just meant under the pandemic right now. Like how the borders are closed.
Yeah, huh? You know what?
I get how a green card works, but with the pandemic, you're Canadian, you live in the States. I
could go back to Canada. I don't know if I could make my way back into the U.S. after.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. I'm like, how does that work right now? Okay.
I don't know, because this is my residency now. I had to actually declare that on my taxes. So I don't know.
It's interesting. I'd have to look into that.
I don't want to find out though.
No, don't do that. Don't experiment. Just stay where you're at. That was one thing I remember when I was in California, and people already kind of knew about the coronavirus. They were joking about it a little bit when I was down there, right before everything hit us really hard. And I was like, man, if something does happen, though, just being Canadian, I'm like, I really want to make sure I'm home because I wouldn't want to get stuck down there and I got insurance and stuff. So
right,
but. Speaking about insurance, you take bumps, you've taken bumps, you know how to take bumps. And a lot of your videos, we've seen you get a little physical, man. We've seen you get locked in ankle locks. We've seen you get chopped. I think people need to appreciate the extra mile you sometimes take to get us a good interview. What has been your most fun and your worst experience in these interviews when it comes to physicality? And where it's not like it was horrible, but the one that probably hurt the most.
I will say that I actually really did enjoy the segment where I took 20 chops from Tyler Breeze and Shawn Spears. I look, they have an incredible wrestling school in Central Florida, and the fact that you can be trained by a current WWE star and a current AEW star is amazing. So I was just great to be there. I basically said to Shawn Spears, who's become a friend of mine, I said, look, I want to do a segment. I want to help you put over your school, get the word out there. Let me take some bumps. I'll run the ropes. And he goes, well, at the end, I think we should, I'll give you a chop. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, okay, but I think we should do something more interesting. I think you should line up all your students and have them chop me. And he's like, dude, are you sure? And this is all off camera. And the way it played out in the video was we tried to make it look like it was Peyton Royce and Shawn Spears' idea. But this was my idea. And that was a really fun segment. I'm really proud of how that went. And they're such good guys.
Yeah.
The segment that wasn't so good was I did a segment at Gangrel's wrestling school in South Florida, in Dania Beach. Gangrel is such a nice guy. He's such an incredibly down-to-earth, cool guy. That's one of my favorite conversations that I've ever had. So I did this interview with him, and then I also did a segment that we aired on the TV station that I was working for, where I wrestled with my co-host, this woman named Lynn Martinez, who'd never wrestled before. But, we showed her how to lock up. We showed her how to run the ropes a little bit. we made it like an interesting and kind of funny segment. And at the end, I said to
Yeah.
Gangrel, I said, I trained for a little while. I'm a huge fan of yours. It'd be such an honor if you gave me the Impaler DDT. And he's like, well, yeah, sure. Well, right now? And I'm like, sure. So the video's up online. I was basically standing there, and he's like, I think we need to circle up. Like, I can't just like kick you and do this. So we circle up like we're gonna do it, kicks me in the gut, and I jumped way too high on it. That's a move where you're supposed to like flatten out and like land on your chest and make your hands. And I jumped way too high, and he lifts me, and I got spiked on my head. Completely my fault. And I got winded, and I was seeing stars. And he like pins me for the video, 1, 2, 3, and he goes, "Dude, you gotta kill yourself." And I'm like, oh my god, I'm okay. And man, that was a very, very terrible mistake that I made, and I don't think I'll ever be doing that one again.
No, but we appreciate it, man. The extent and the lengths you will go to entertain your followers that come for your interviews and stuff. Like,
but let's be honest here. I'm not doing it to entertain them.
I know.
Doing it because it's
entertaining to yourself. Yeah, no, for
like
sure.
A finisher from.
I'm trying to put you over here, okay?
No, they're all for me. These are selfish moments.
I'm trying to put you over here. Everybody, look at what he does for us, okay?
I did have a really cool moment with Jeff Hardy. This interview was like 8 years ago. I told him I trained at one time. That was my goal, to be a wrestler. And towards the end of the interview, as I'm wrapping things up, he goes, "Well, let's see you lock it up." And I'm like, and we're near a chain link fence. I'm thinking like, do you want me to like lock the, like, what are we doing? He's like, "Dude, like let's lock it up." And I'm like, oh, okay. Like he wants to like lock up with me. And I was like, wow, like this, he asked me. This is amazing.
That's nuts. What was I gonna say? So if someone was going to go to your YouTube channel or check out your podcast, which they can find on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else you can listen to podcasts, what interviews would you recommend for them to check out? Like ones that you thought and you think there was something really good to take out of it. Maybe like your top 5 if you can think of 5, but ones that you think they could take the most out of, or there was like, I know every interview is special in its own way, but ones that kind of left you like, you know what, like I hope a lot of people listen to this one because there's a good story here, there's a good message here or something.
Well, I think that like I take like one little nugget out of every interview. There's always something that when the interview is done, I go, wow, I didn't know that, or man, I think I see this person in a completely different way than I saw them before. Obviously, the top of that list has got to be The Rock. I mean, he's been.
I wanted to ask you about The Rock. How do you? Because I'm sure a lot of times you've interviewed The Rock, it's been more on the entertainment aspect of things, right? He's probably putting out movies and preparing and stuff like that. How do you approach that when you deep down inside you want to ask a wrestling question?
Yeah, and I think if I'm being completely honest, if The Rock's promoting, like I've interviewed him for a couple Fast and Furious movies, for Rampage, I've interviewed him for Jumanji, for the movie he did with Central Intelligence with Kevin Hart. The thing is, I don't think Rock wants to talk that much about wrestling, especially when he's promoting a film.
No, exactly.
But I'm aware, number one, I got to do a job. I'm in there as an entertainment reporter. We want to promote whatever movie it is that you're talking about. So that's first and foremost. But I know that number 2, if I post this on my YouTube channel, I got to have some sort of wrestling question in there. So I always approach it like that. And Rock is the nicest man. He's so humble. And he has this amazing star quality where he goes out of his way to make you feel special. Even though he's the biggest star in the world, he goes out of his way to like compliment you in a way, or put his hand on your shoulder in a way, like something that makes you feel like very connected to him.
Yeah.
And that's just something that I've actually taken from him, and like I really appreciate that about him. So Rock's got to be number 1 on that list, and just he's the biggest star in the world for a reason. John Cena, the interview I did with him was only supposed to be 10 minutes, and he kept giving me more and more time. It was the only interview he did last year at WrestleMania, and I just felt so grateful that not only did he give me that time to do the interview, but he trusted me enough that basically he texted me that this interview was going to happen. So John Cena was like texting me like when and where, and I met him at a gym, and he basically walked up, shook my hand, said, "We've got 10 minutes." And I'm like, okay, great. At the 10-minute mark, I went to wrap it up. He reaches in his pocket, grabs his phone, and goes, "Oh, we still got more time." So the fact that he wasn't trying to like wrap this interview up and rush out of there was
Were you prepared for another 10 minutes if that was the case, or did you like do it on the fly?
I could have talked to him for 3 hours.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
You know, I think though that, you know, at the end he goes, "You've got one more question," and I'm like, "Oh my god, there's like 70 questions in my head right now. Here's the question." Okay, so that was the one I really enjoyed. The interview I did with, I'll just list off a few more here. The one I did with Ryback meant a lot to me because I think that people got to see a different side of Ryback than who they thought he was. And Ryback's actually told me several times that that interview really changed things for him because it allowed people to see a different side of him, to see that he wasn't just the bully that he played on TV. And actually, that interview with him showed him the power of YouTube, and his channel just started exploding from there. The MJF interview I did is certainly memorable because
possibly one of my favorites. Possibly one of my favorites. The dude's a one of a kind asshole for sure.
yeah. So that one, and then the interview I did with DDP was completely random, unplanned. I had checked into a hotel in Los Angeles, and I'm unpacking my bag. I just checked in, and I hear this someone like trying to get into my room, like trying the door handle, can't get in the room, banging on the door, trying to get in, and I'm like, this person will figure out they're in the wrong room. It keeps going, another few minutes. So I finally go over the door. I look through the people. It's Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah, I don't remember this, but now I remember the story, so I do remember this. It was an unexpected.
It was the day he did Joe Rogan. He had just come from Joe Rogan's studio. I guess that was the hotel he was being put up at. So I opened the door. I go, "Well, you're in the wrong room, but I'm a big fan." He's like, "Bro, I gotta go to the bathroom so bad." And I'm like, come on in. So he comes in, goes to the bathroom, and I'm standing there like, oh my god.
Have you guys met before? Like, how did he know?
No, never.
How did he know who you were?
He didn't. He had no idea who I was.
Okay.
He was. I can't remember the actual room that he was supposed to be in, but let's say I was in room 404. He was in 504 and just got off at the wrong floor. And so he thought he was at 504, but he was just on the wrong floor. So he had no idea who I was, no idea what I did. And when he came out of the bathroom, I said, I just got to let you know, man, like I have this wrestling podcast that I do. I'd love to have you on sometime. He's like, oh, man, you wouldn't believe the day that I've had. Let's do it right now. And I'm like,
it also speaks levels of who Diamond Dallas Page is because most wrestlers probably wouldn't react that way.
We spent the next 2 hours not only just doing the interview, but then hanging out. It was mind blowing.
That's insane. That's
like so serendipitous. Of all the hotels in Los Angeles that he could be at, of all the rooms that
he was knocking on.
Right.
Yeah.
And neither of us lived there. That was what was so wild about it. So that one, it was just like, I think the universe just kind of aligning us. And DDP and I have like remained close since then. Every time I see him, gives me this big hug. He's like, bro, I tell everyone about this story. I still can't believe that happened. I'm like, you can't believe that happened. I can't believe that happened.
That's insane. Well, so people go check out those interviews. We had John Cena, we had The Rock, we had DDP, we had MJF, and there was one more that I just Ryback. Make sure you go check out the Ryback one. And I will say that about Ryback too. I think a lot of people do have the wrong perception of him just because things have been said about him. Really cool dude. But before we go, I know we've kind of done it already. We've talked a lot of about a lot of stuff that people can digest for advice or whatnot. But I know for a fact that there are many people that follow my page who are huge wrestling fans and have the intention to maybe do something with wrestling, whether it's becoming a wrestler, whether it's doing interviews or backstage interviews. I'm sure you're well aware of Sock Monkey Mike, who's huge on wanting to become doing interviews or ring announcing and stuff. Like, I got people that follow my page that are really interested in doing something within wrestling, regardless what it is. And they've seen what the power of social media has done for people like me, who is just like a really big fan, but has the opportunity to talk to really cool people just because, I put some effort into it. So coming from you, if you could give any advice to those people that kind of want to, wrestling's an interesting business, man. It's a lot of traditions and rituals and things you got to do. You've been around it a lot now. You've been around a lot of wrestlers. If someone was trying to get into the wrestling business, they want to interview wrestlers and stuff like that, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think that you just got to go out there and start doing it. That's number one. When independent wrestling shows start back up in your town, If you're not going to them, well, you're already making a huge mistake. And I think that's a really fascinating thing. There's a lot of people out there that call themselves wrestling fans have never been to an independent wrestling show. So I think that needs to change. So if you want to work in the wrestling world in any way, shape, or form, whether you want to be a wrestler or you want to be a ring announcer or you want to be an interviewer, a referee, whatever you want to do, you got to start putting your reps in. You got to start, making the right connections. So I think start going to your local independent wrestling shows and start just getting specific about what it is that you want to do. And I think that that's where it begins. It begins with you going, what do I want to do? Who's a person that I want to model my career after or model this hobby that I have after? Okay, great. It's this person. Well, what were they doing when they were my age or when they were at my stage of the game? So take where they're at and then just kind of take it back however many steps it takes to get back to the step that you're at. And then just start following those steps in the reverse order. Reverse engineer what that person's doing and do it for yourself. I think that if you went to a wrestling promoter and said, I'm an 18-year-old kid who wants to be part of this in some sort of way, can I show up early to your next show and sell tickets, sell merchandise, sell hot dogs, put up the ring, put up chairs? That promoter's not going to go, no thanks, man.
Oh.
And I think that that's the biggest thing is how can you provide value? Because the promoter can provide value in giving you what you'd like. You can provide value by going, here's my time that I will give to you.
That's 100% true, because actually when I look back at my own story, I'm like, a lot of it did start with me going to these ECCW local wrestling shows here, linking up with them and being like, hey, I don't know, I got popular on social media. Can I interview you guys? And just doing these podcasts with these guys when they're there. So I think that's actually really good advice, because that led me to being more confident and getting out of my comfort zone initially to keep moving forward and be like, let's see what else we can do. I think that is true, though. A lot of people just got to take that first step. That was some great advice, man. I think hopefully, I know you've inspired me. I find you, like, I know that everybody's journey is different, but we do cross a lot of the similar crossroads. And to hear other people's stories and be like, wow, like they went through that too, or like, there's some things out here that I can totally relate with. It's cool, man, because I think a lot of people, when they listen to other people's stories, they find parts of like, I can relate to that. But that happened to me too, or like, and that's why I want to have these casual conversations, talk to people about the stuff they've been through and their stories and just how they feel about what's going on now in wrestling, and just picking people's brains so people can kind of get to know them better than just what they see on social media through pictures and videos, like the actual people behind them, the actual person that you see on YouTube or on television. I really appreciate you coming on here and doing this.
No, I appreciate you asking me to come on here. And look, I think that obviously no one's going to remember an hour-long interview like this one or any of the ones that I do. But if you can pick one little nugget from any podcast that you listen to, whether it's wrestling related or not, and you're able to apply that to your life, I think that's just a huge win.
Yeah, I try to do that with everything, even like past real life experiences. If I went through something that was really shitty, like I went through some experience, I'm like, oh, that sucked in the moment, I hated it. But now, like 5 years later, I can look back at it and be like, what was that silver lining of that happening? You'll find it if you try. So if you listen to this and you're looking for something, you'll find something in this. You just gotta be looking for it and waiting to hear it, and you'll hear something that you relate to. And selfishly, at the end of all this, I did really want to talk to you myself, because yes, we've talked, yes, we know each other, but we've never actually got to like talk properly for longer than like 5 minutes. Not even. And like I said, I look at what you're doing and I'm like, man, that's so cool. And I do look up to you in that way. And it's great to be able to like hear your story and pick your brain. And like I said, like I like, if I took anything out of it, I heard those parts where you're telling me that you went through some stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's relatable. I get that. He went through some stuff and look what he's doing now. It's possible.
We've all been through
possible,
some stuff,
Justin.
Right? Yeah. We've all been through some stuff. And I look forward to being able to do this in person.
No, for sure.
The first beer's on me. The first Coke-Beans are going to be on me.
First Coke-Beans on for sure, man. The second one's on me. I'll see you down the road. Thank you for doing this. Where can people find you?
It's just my name, which is right there. So at Chris Van Vliet on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Wherever you're listening to this in podcast form, it's the Chris Van Vliet Show.
I appreciate it. Check them out, guys. You guys know where to find me, because I probably directed you to this video anyways, but or the audio. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. And yeah, man, well, hopefully we'll get to do this again, hopefully in person, down in LA, or even if you come up to Vancouver, because
done. We'll make it happen.
Beautiful up here too.
congrats to you on everything you've been doing. I think that you're kind of underselling that. Like, it takes a lot of work.
It does.
Doing.
I know. I forget who said it. There was a quote. I don't know the quote off the top of my head. I think Undertaker even said it in an interview that he did with one of these pastors that he's been doing interviews with. But there is a good balance of, yes, it is hard work, but there is a good balance of luck sometimes too. And it's been a bit of both. And I will humbly admit that, like, a lot of it has been luck and a lot of it has been hard work. But the reason I always say, I don't know, is because I'm not going to go into my story, but when I started this, I had no idea what it was going to be. I started a wrestling page because my ex-girlfriend didn't want me to have Instagram. That's the beginning of the story, okay? Wow. And then everything that happened along the way, like, I almost didn't even know exactly what I could do with it. Like, it started in 2014. I had no idea the potential of it until like 2016 when I was at WrestleMania and I saw people wearing Wrestling Classic shirts. I'm like, oh, people are like repping my merchandise like at WrestleMania weekend. It's been a weird journey, and that's a whole conversation for another day. Maybe we'll talk about it, but the trials and tribulations of the Wrestling Classic and sleeping on a hotel room for his last-minute trips to be in New Orleans for WrestleMania because I got promised one thing that didn't end up happening and ended up going somewhere else and something else happening. Like, the stories of all of that that's for another time. But
look, man, congrats to you on everything, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you, giving me this time to hang out with you and have this casual conversation.
Oh, thank you, man. I try to keep it casual because still trying to get that professional thing down. But
who needs that?
I appreciate you doing it though, and we'll definitely do this again. Hopefully, this quarantine started this whole casual conversation thing, and hopefully, I can keep it going for as long. Staying consistent with it, folks. Hopefully, I can stay consistent with it because that's what matters. Hope you guys all enjoyed this episode. Talk to you all later. Ooh, yeah, dig it.
Time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.